call to order the regular meeting of mayor and council. If you'll rise for the invocation by Councilman McCoy.
Bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to gather in your name. Lord, continue to watch over us as a people, as a world, as a nation, as a community, and as a city. Lord, continue to work on us each day. Thank you for the gifts you provided us each and every day. Lord, work on us this evening, Lord. Provide us the knowledge and the will underneath your name and your grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, are there any changes to the agenda for this meeting?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay, council members, each of you received a copy of the meeting minutes. If there are no changes, I'll accept the motion to accept.
Vice Mayor Henderson, I will make that motion.
Thank you, Councilman. I have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Vice.
Is there any discussion on the motions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We have a 7:05 meeting. I want to call Deputy Chief Rappa up in order to take care of new business number 2. No, I'm sorry, number 3. I'm sorry.
So, Deputy Mayor, Council members, City Manager. So in 2019, later that year, Councilman King proposed that we have an exchange zone for e-commerce, child custody, what have you. But due to infrastructure constraints and the renovation that was going to start and paving and a new camera system being installed, we weren't able to do it at that time. But after this evening, and once the poles are added, we have 2 of these signs that were created by Impact Graphics, designed by Sierra, and these will be going in our parking lot. So they will, our parking lot's monitored 24 hours, recorded for 24 hours. So we'll be able to, anything should happen, we will have it on video, and also our call takers will be able to monitor any exchange that's going on and be able to alert officers to respond.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. You guys can see that? That's awesome. Good with that? Yeah, that looks really good.
So for those of you who are looking, I think you've seen the slide, but there it is in real life.
It's bigger than it looks.
That's right. Here we go.
So once again, I'd like to recognize Councilman King for his efforts in bringing this. It's been a project long time in coming, and finally, thanks to resources provided to the department, we're able to make it happen and do it right. So if there's any, before I open it up to a motion, are there any other comments?
I'd like to just make one.
Sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate the effort and energy that went into making this come to life. E-commerce sales and you see online marketplace and things is just, it's growing leaps and bounds, and it's going to continue to grow. And it's really nice to know that there's an area in our community where people can go and meet and be safe. And so I appreciate the effort. No, absolutely. It's a team effort, but and I think it's an added benefit to our community. So thank you.
Councilman Santos.
And with this, you can also use it besides the e-commerce sales, right? If someone needs to drop off their kid with a different parent, they can do it in a place that's going to be monitored.
Absolutely.
So that's also,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Anything else? If not, I'll accept the motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, I make the motion to approve the recommendation of Chief of Police Marshall Kraft to place signage to be installed that identifies an exchange zone to be established at the Seaford Police Department, 300 Virginia Avenue, as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilman McCoy. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, I'll ask for the yeas and nays. Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson? Aye. Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Appreciate it very much. And did you say we're waiting on posts?
That's correct.
You have an idea
I do not.
as soon as they, okay.
As soon as we get up, we can-
All right. Thank you very much. So it is 7:05, and we're going to adjourn the regular meeting and call to order the public hearing. We have item number one. We're going to invite Mrs. Brandy Nelman, of Sussex County Director of Community Development and Housing, to present information for the development of an application to the State of Delaware Community Development Block Grant Program to include the city of Seaford.
As you see, I'm not Brandy Norman.
Okay.
Had you accused her for a minute, didn't I? Yeah. My name is Mike Jones. I'm a rehab program coordinator.
Sir, could you pull the mic up, please? Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Mike Jones, rehab program coordinator for Sussex County Community Development. And I'd like to thank the mayor and the council for letting us do this, have a public hearing this evening. I have two other people from my office here with me this evening, Brandon Hamilton and Taisha Palmer, DuPont Palmer. She's also here with me. Our office applies and administers Community Block Grant Program, which is called CDBG, for Sussex County. We apply for funding on behalf of the municipalities of rural communities. This CDBG program comes from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD. It is also applied to Sussex. We acquired for Sussex and Kent counties through Delaware State Housing Authority. This grant year, approximately $2 million will be awarded to Kent and Sussex counties on a competitive basis. One requirement of the CBD program is to hold a public hearing, which is what we're doing this evening, gives the opportunity to explain our program to provide an update. Most importantly, for the citizens and local leaders, a chance to have an input of a coming application. The Delaware State Housing Authority governs the grant process throughout the consultative plan. The projects are allowed to benefit persons of low to moderate income. By saying that, it's anything below 80% of area medium income, and that's set for Sussex County by HUD. And for the year of 2021, our income is 80% is you have to have below $42,100 per person. And it goes up about $6,000 a person in the family. So if you have 4 people in the family, you can make up to $60,000 and still be eligible for our program. Historically, a majority of our funding is homeowner-occupied housing rehab because it keeps and maintains the housing stock here in Seaford. We have a few requirements that govern our program that is set down through HUD. And one of the program is a house has to be homeowner-occupied. So I can't really help a home, like if you have a homeowner with a landlord-tenant type problem, we can't help with that. You have to live in the home to be able to help you there with that. And then low-income income, like we just went over. The house has to be insured or be insurable, the house that we work on. So sometimes, every once in a while, we'll have a house where they could get insurance if we put a roof on the house. So that means insurable, so if we put a roof on, they get a house. So we can work with that. And in their county and town taxes have to be paid. Because one thing we have to do, we have to come get, in here in the city of Seaford, we have to come get a town permit to work on the house as well as we have to get a county permit. So both places, the taxes have to be paid. Any type of fees that are owed to the town has to be paid before we get the permit. So that has to be done before we even start the work, because if we can't get a permit, there's no need to even start anything further. So that's one thing. That's one thing happens a lot of times. We generate money through the towns because they're going to pay their taxes for the money that we're going to help with. So that happens a lot of different times. One thing we have to do also, we have to put a lien on the property. A lien on the property means we're not just up here fixing somebody's house up for them to flip and sell it the next day or next afternoon, which a house could sell in a day or in this neighborhood, this day and time. So we have, if it's under $15,000 we spend on the home, it's a 5-year lien. If it's over $15,000, it's a 10-year lien. And we can go up to $40,000 down on the house. So it's a prorated, no payback lien. There's no money coming back to us at all, except if they happen to sell their home. If they sell their home and that time period hasn't gone by yet, then the money comes back to us, which in turn comes back to the town. Because any money that comes back through our program, through a town, it goes back to that town. So it just generates so and just keeps snowballing right on through. So, and the last, this is one thing I really like. In the last 5 years, Seaford has received over $489,000 for the town of Seaford. That's how much money we've got for the town of Seaford the last 5 years, which is a nice little chunk of change to be able to help out with the town here. We have applied for over $840,000. That's what we always apply for, always ask for a little bit more than we get, but that's just the way it works. So we apply for that much money to help to get as much as we can for Seaford. You have a lot of homes here, a lot of older homes here, and it's this day and time with the cost of everything, price of everything's going up. And that's why we've actually raised our amount that we can spend on the house, because the price of everything, the labor, material, and everything's going so high. In that 5-year period, we helped over 42 households here in Seaford. One other thing we do is, it's really unseen a lot of times, is our county council gives us money to use at our discretion for emergency funding in the whole county, which includes any of the outside areas or the towns. So we get a phone call, somebody needs a handicap ramp to be able to come home from a hospital, or a hot water heater blows up, or electric goes crazy or something. They can give us a call. We can help out with our county funding too. And we've done that a number of times in Seaford too. And that's not even reflected in the $489,000 speaking of. That's money on top of that. And that's through our county council gives that to us. Currently, Seaford has approximately 12 people, on the waiting list, which is a good number. I left the manager a list of the people we have on the list right now. They're going to go over the list and see if there's anybody that needs to come off, if they've passed away, or if they've moved or sold their house, or if anybody needs to go back on our list. And that's one reason why we're here this evening too. If anybody wants to be added to our waiting list, just give us a call at our office. My phone number is 302-855-7777. And we'd be glad to be able to send them an application and be able to put on the list here in Seaford. To help any way we can. And again, the main reason why we hold this meeting is to have the input from the council, the mayor and the council, and anybody here in the audience that would like to ask any questions or anything like that. So at this time, if anybody has a question for me, I'd be glad to answer anything you guys would have.
Councilman King, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor Henderson. So if I understood you correctly, the telephone number was 855-7777?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you prioritize, like, is there things that kind of a sense of urgency? Or is it solely based on, hey, you're on this waiting list, and when it falls off, we move you up the line, or is it based on?
Yeah, we generally go down the waiting list. In case there's a emergency, in case a tree limb would fall through somebody's roof and it's going to start leaking, they need something done immediately, then we can step up and sort of help that person. You know, but generally we go down the waiting list from the top to the bottom to try to get the work done.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just the comment, I appreciate, almost $500,000, more than $500,000 when you add in the money that the council contributes.
Right.
I just appreciate what you guys do for our community.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council? Councilman Santos?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You mentioned that if someone has a water heater that goes out, or someone needs a ramp to be installed if they're coming home from the hospital, it's based on that. It seems like it's pretty. The response is pretty quick.
Well, that's our emergency money I'm speaking of for the county council gives us every year. In that rate, we can act fairly quick on that at all, because especially with a ramp. I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen, but if you're in the hospital and you need a ramp before they send you home, if you don't go home, you go to a nursing home. And a lot of times that's how quick it has to happen. So we have some contractors can step up and get a ramp in fairly quick. As far as like a hot water heater or something like that, if We always like to turn the tap on and hot water come out of it, you know, we need it. And we look at that, it's something we can get a plumber in to take care of that as quick as possible as well. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions from council? If not, I'll open it up to the public, if there are any questions. Having seen none, we thank you for your time, sir,
Thank you.
and we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you, sir.
The next item is a proposed update to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan to change the tax map parcel 531-12.08-1.00 from C2 highway commercial to R1 low density residential. And we'll welcome the building official.
How you doing? I'm Buddy Lynch, Code Inspector for City of Seaford. So we have two public hearings today, both on the same property. What you can see up here is the comprehensive map, and the map on the right shows what the change would look like if it's approved tonight. So it'll be changing from red to yellow, from commercial to residential, which, as you can see, fits the rest of the neighborhood there to the east and the south of it. The property's located at the corner of Oak Street and West Stein Highway. On that. So this is just the request to update the comprehensive plan map.
Okay, are there any questions from council on this change? City Manager, could you give us some background on the reason for this change?
Yes, sir. It's been several years now. This property was developed as a builder's showroom. And I actually think we have the property owner here. And maybe if you could come forward and introduce yourself, that would be appreciated.
Sure.
It was actually Accessible Home Builders.
Right.
Still is Accessible Home Builders.
Right.
And we worked together to develop this. This was across from, as you can see on the map, some commercial areas. And they built this showroom house at that time and used it for better part of a decade for
Probably so.
commercial approach. They met with clients there, did all that, and it was a good location for them. Is there any other background you'd like to give the council? You built that on an empty lot at the time, did you not?
It was an empty lot.
First
yes.
off, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. I'm Scott Lanham, owner of Accessible Home Builders.
Thank you.
Right.
And through that process now, the business has changed, and now they would like to, as I understand it, sell the house residentially.
Yes.
And honestly, when you ride by it, if you did not know its prior history, it looks like a house.
Right.
It's a very nice home. So hence the zoning change, and I believe the genesis behind having the zoning change, it's best if your use of your property matches your zoning, so that in the future, if you want to do something, you don't need a variance, it's not a non-conforming use. So that basically is the request and kind of how we got here.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb.
Sure.
I have a
Question for me?
Yes.
Sure.
So when you look at that area, you know, Amazon's coming, right? You got a lot of industrial area to the left of that property.
Right.
When you look at commercial availability on Stein or on that area, it's very limited to begin with. Once you change it from commercial to residential, I'm just curious on, to me, it looked like the commercial aspect would be very desirable as well, considering what's going on in that location, and it's such limited space.
We tried to sell it as a commercial structure before, but the parking is very limited.
Okay.
And worked for us as a model home showroom, but as any other commercial purpose, the parking limitations were really restrictive. So selling it as a residence made more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Anything else?
Any other questions from council?
Vice Mayor.
Councilman McCoy?
And I apologize for going out of order, but back to
We're
the,
still dealing with number 2.
well, my question was more about the public hearing. Number 1, do we have to make a motion to approve participating in that?
No, sir, we're still in a public hearing, and we do not vote in a public hearing. We'll come out of the public hearing and do the motions after we're in
We'll go
regular
1, 2,
session.
3 after
Yes, sir.
10-4.
Any other questions from council?
No, sir.
Any other questions from the general public? If not, then we'll move on to item number 3 in the public hearing. Accessible Home Builders are requesting a rezoning for property located at 616 Oak Road, tax map and parcel 531-12.08-1.00, Zone C2, Highway Commercial District.
All right, so this is for the same property we just spoke about, 616 Oak Road. This would be the change of zone to change it from commercial, actually, and change it to R1, low-density residential. Here you can see the property where it's located directly across from Huber and all of the surrounding residential properties. So they're requesting to change from C2 highway commercial to R1 low-density residential. The property meets the R1 area and bulk requirements. It has the 75-foot width minimum and the 7,500 square feet minimum. And as we said, it'll match the zoning of the properties to the east and the south.
Okay. Just a procedural thing. Although items 2 and 3 appear to be similar, they are procedurally different. So just want to make sure that the council understands that. Are there any questions from council on this item? Are there any questions from the general public on this item? If not, then we'll go ahead and close. Thank you, buddy. We'll close the public hearing and we'll reopen the regular meeting. So we have in front of us some business from public hearing item number 1. I'll seek a motion on public hearing item number 1.
Vice Mayor, I'll make the motion. Motion to approve participating in the development of an application to the State of Delaware Community Development Block Grant CBDG program to include the City of Seaford and permit the Vice Mayor to execute all necessary documents as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Councilman King, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, sir. We have a second. Is there any other discussion on the motion? If not, I'll take the yeas and nays. Councilman McCoy?
Yay.
Councilman King?
Yay.
Councilman Howell?
Yay.
Councilman Henderson, yes, based on findings of facts. Councilman Santos?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote. On item number 2, if there's no questions on the item, I'll receive a motion.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'll make that motion to approve the update of the future land use map of the comprehensive plan to change tax map parcel 531-12.08-1.00 from C2 highway commercial to R1 low density residential as presented.
Thank you, Councilman Howland. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Councilman Santos has a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll take the yeas and nays. Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson, yes, based on findings of facts. And item number 3, I'll receive a motion.
All right, Mr. Vice Mayor, Councilman King, I'll make a motion to approve Accessible Home Builders' request for a rezoning of the property located at 616 Oak Road, tax map and parcel number 531-12.08-1.00, Zone C2 Highway Commercial District as presented.
Thank you, Councilman King. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Councilman McCoy has a second. Is there any discussion on the motions? Hearing none, I'll take the yeas and nays. Councilman King?
Yes, based on the findings of facts.
Councilman McCoy?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Holland?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Henderson? Yes, based on findings of facts. And Councilman Santos?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Tish. Nice seeing you.
Okay, so we'll move on to new business number 1, Ms. Tracy Torbert. She's going to present information regarding the 2022 municipal election.
Good
Welcome.
evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so the 2022 municipal election will be here before you know it. This year, it will be held on April 16th, 2022, and I do want to point out that that is a holiday weekend. The following day is Easter, so offices will be closed that Friday before for the Good Friday holiday. As everyone's aware, that we recently transitioned over to the Department of Elections system for their voter database, and everyone must be registered with them by March 26, 2022 by 5:00 p.m. All non-resident property owners, we will still maintain that book here at City Hall, and they must be registered here the same date and time here at City Hall. This year, the mayor seat is up, as well as one council member seat, which is Councilman Coy's. The mayor will be elected for a 2-year term, and the council person will be elected for a 3-year term. In order to file for candidacy, that must be done by February 22nd by 5:00 p.m. here in the office. If you can't make it during normal business hours, then you can make it by appointment. At this point in time, we do have 78 non-resident property owners that are registered, and we have, on the last listing that I got from the Department of Elections, which all of you were sent, there was 4,814 people on that listing. That's the gist of it.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Tracy, can you talk a little bit about the absentee ballot process? Has that changed? Is it still the same? What does that look like?
No, we actually follow the absentee ballot process before our charter change. We follow the state of Delaware absentee process, so that will stay the same. As far as, you still have to give the affidavit, you return it to our office, we verify that you're registered and eligible voter, and then the ballot is released to you, and then you return it to our office by the close of polls.
Awesome, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Okay, we'll move on to new business number 2. We'll present for approval revisions to the fee and rate schedule to include the electric rate changes approved by the City Council at the November 9th, 2021 meeting.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. In your packages, council has the draft schedule of fees and rates, which we routinely approve and provide to the public. So you'll see it was approved, the option for electrical rate increases, option number 2, was approved November 9th at City Council meeting, and it is effective December 1. So you'll see there in your red line copy in your package the changes to the electric utility rates. It is exactly the changes that were approved. We just wanted to bring this through City Council to have it formally voted on so we could go ahead and adopt this and publish it for our customers. And I certainly can try to answer any questions council might have.
Are there any questions? I just have the one question. So as far as water and sewer rates, that will come sometime after the first of the year towards the time of enactment for the new rates.
Yes, sir, you are correct. Yep.
Are there any other questions from council? If not, seek a motion.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the revisions to the fee and rate schedule to include the electrical rate changes approved by the City Council at the November 9th, 2021 meeting as presented.
Okay, thank you, Councilman McCoy. We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'll second that motion.
We have a second from Councilman Holland. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, I'll take the yeas and nays. Councilman McCoy?
Yay.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson? Aye. Councilman Santos?
Aye.
And Councilman King?
Aye.
Thank you very much. You ready to roll?
Yes, sir.
Okay, moving on to to new business number 4. We'll invite the Deputy Chief back up. to present a request to purchase an administrative vehicle for the police department due to limited availability of leased vehicle options.
That's correct. In our 21-22 budget year, we were approved for 3 vehicles purchased through our vendor, Enterprise Leasing, to get 3 vehicles. Fortunately, by the time that we were able to order those vehicles, they no longer do the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, or they cannot get them. Now, with that, that puts us down 1 vehicle. The alternative they offered us was a Subaru Legacy, which, not that it was a bad car, but we would have to take it all the way down to Salisbury for maintenance. That's the closest Subaru dealer. Most of the time when dealing with Subarus, maintenance is a lot more and very specific. So we are requesting that we go out to bid for something that's more feasible, but yet still staying within what was basically approved for that vehicle in that price range is what we're looking at. Anything with either a Ford Explorer, the new Chevrolet Traverse, something along in that range.
Any questions? I have a question regarding, it might be for the city manager, maybe it's for you, but are lease vehicles, are regular service intervals included?
No, they are not.
They're not?
Due to the fact of, if we were a normal business, per se, where they have a history in dealing with that kind of routine maintenance. Enterprise has only been in the law enforcement world for approximately now 7 years. So they really have no data to really put that price point into that included price, which your maintenance is going to be dependent on the city, the town, how long the vehicles run idle. Your maintenance is going to vary. So you're probably talking, if they did do that, would probably be well out of our reach.
So I see in the literature here that you expect the final cost over the financing period to be similar to the leasing.
Yeah.
Except we will have full equity in the vehicle at the end of the payment period.
Yes, sir. It's predicated on a few things, okay? We're hopeful we can find a vehicle that meets the needs through the dealership network. We recently bid 2 trucks for Public Works and Parks, and we were fortunate that they did have some vehicles. And then we would finance this for a 5-year period, which should be about the same, plus or minus, as the lease rate. So as far as the budget goes, it should be similar in cost. And we, if this is approved tonight by the City Council, staff will work to prepare the bid, and then the bid will come back to City Council once we have that, if we're successful. And then you'll know the financing terms, the rate that we receive, so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions? Councilman King?
So, Mr. Anderson, with that being said, let's say that we can't find something we're satisfied with.
Yeah.
Is that something you just carry on to the following year until?
Yeah, unfortunately, and Deputy Chief has experience with that, right? When we entered into our lease program, I believe we entered into it in about 2019.
2019, yes.
And the second year or third year, we couldn't get any vehicles due to timing. So we had to skip a year for leasing, which really put a bind on the fleet that we're trying to, keep going. So yeah, Councilman, that would, there's limited options out there now for purchasers. So we might wind up, if we can't find it through this option, we might have to wait until, early 2022.
Thank you.
That would be unfortunate.
But the expectation is that they would be, that those funds would be expended in fiscal year 2022.
Yes, sir, you're correct. That's our hope, is if we can make this happen, get the bid documents out in the next, say, 30 days or so, allow the vendors 30 days to return the bids to us, then yeah, we would look to January, February, hopefully to have a vehicle for the police department if possible. And, if we cannot procure a vehicle, this may force us next year to, instead of, I think our leasing program says we'll do 3 or 4 next year, this may cause us to increase that request to council if we cannot procure a vehicle this budget year.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? If there are none, I'll seek a motion.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I will make a motion to approve the request of Chief of Police Marshall Kraft to purchase an administrative vehicle for the police department due to limited availability of leased vehicle options as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Councilman Santos. I'll seek a second.
I'll second that. Councilman King.
Councilman King seconds. Any questions on the motion? If not, then I'll hear the yeas and nays. Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
And Councilman Henderson, aye. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you, Mike.
Pardon me. Moving on to business number 5. We'll present for approval revisions to the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Seaford, Delaware, and the Delaware Office of State Planning Coordination addressing coordinated review of certain development proposals and permit the Vice Mayor to execute the revised document on behalf of the city. I'll turn it over to our City Manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The memorandum of understanding that you have in your council has in their packages is a longstanding MOU with Office of State Planning. We've utilized this, I believe, for about the last 15 years or so. And it governs when we take projects for state review through the PLUS process. And that's when everybody in the state gets together and they review your process and give you feedback. So just as an example, what existed prior to any residential subdivision or land developments containing 100 or more dwelling units, or non-residential subdivisions or site plan involving structures or buildings with a floor area equal to or exceeding 75,000 square feet. So those were our speed limits. Anything below that, 50-unit subdivision, we could do internally. Council had that authority. Above that, 100 or 100 and more, then council had to also get input from the various state agencies through the PLUS process. We now, as council is aware, we've adopted our comprehensive plan. So just as tonight, Mr. Lynch presented a change to the comprehensive plan document. It was a very minor change, one parcel with the zoning that we wanted to change it to, surrounding it on 2 sides, as Mr. Lynch laid out. So when we had this condition, we reached out to the Office of State Planning, and we don't want to take every small zoning change or minor comprehensive plan change through the PLUS process. It adds 45 or 60 days to the process. So what the language to this MOU that's been revised that you see there in red outlines that. So it says the rezoning is of unique circumstances and cannot set precedents for other lands in the vicinity of the rezoning. So it couldn't be a one-off special thing. The relative size of the rezoning or the variation from the land use recommended by the comprehensive plan is so minor that it would not have an impact on the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. And then C, the proposed zoning is adjacent to the immediate vicinity of other similarly zoned lands and would not alter the pattern of development in the area. And then it says, upon notification of a rezoning the city of Seaford that meets these criteria, the state will concur in writing that to the city that it's hereby waiving the PLUS review process in this instance. So as we'll move forward, just like with what we had tonight, we did exactly the same thing. We didn't have this document, but it brought up a point. When we have minor changes to our comprehensive plan that we're going to change, if it's a small minor change that meets these criteria, we'll communicate with them and they'll say, that's a minor change, go ahead and do that without our PLUS review. If they don't agree and they say that's a big change, then we'll run it through the PLUS process and that'll be part of your public hearing, what the PLUS comments are on that particular change. This is a long-standing memorandum of agreement. It's really good to have this, so it kind of gives us the rules of the road when we're doing development with our building official, with our developers, so we can say, you're doing this, we need to go through PLUS, or you're doing this, we don't need to go through PLUS. So staff has reviewed this and would recommend council consider authorizing the execution of the changes, and certainly if there are any questions, we will try to answer them.
Any questions? Councilman King.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. So Charles, how do you measure something minor versus something major? So how do you
It's a good question. Yeah, it's, and again, they tried to draw these parameters. So, if the zoning is like the area surrounding it, and you're just going to kind of spread that zone, that's one thing. If it's one parcel, that's pretty clear. If it's a couple parcels, we're probably okay. You get into 5, 6, 7 parcels, large acreages, we're likely going to go through planning and zoning, or I'm sorry, through plus review. But the building official, myself, will work with the Office of State Planning. They're very accessible. We can, transfer them files, have them look at it. We'll have that conversation, and we'll move forward, making sure we get that done and coordinate with the state.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
And I have one question.
Councilman Santos?
And so you mentioned if it's like more than 5 parcels, or that's kind of what if it's not by parcels? What if it's like a large piece of land, a couple acres or more?
Yeah, if we were going to change the zone drastically, or the vice mayor and I were speaking about this at our liaison meeting, and one example we brought up was, council probably remembers when we incorporated the new, the downtown used to be commercial. We changed it to Riverfront Enterprise Zone. Doing something like that where you wholesale change an area and you add a new zone, it was never contemplated in your comprehensive plan, so that's clear cut. There are shades as you move down away from that. We would just have to take it one step at a time and see what that break point is. I can't give you a clear answer. It's, at 100 acres or at 50 acres.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions before I have a crack at it? So the building official, the code inspector, whoever's going to correspond with the state planning coordinator, how much time does that add to the process of, say, this gentleman that was here tonight?
It's a good point. Yeah, for a minor one like this, this could, if we would have had to take this minor parcel change through the plus process, I'm just going to estimate for you, it would have added 45 to 60 days, best case scenario. And then we would have to get our approval within that, so it might even stretch it out. If you're talking about, Councilman Santos talked about a large parcel or something like that, council's aware we go through a 3-step process for our approvals. So, we can plan with the developer that longer time frame. If you have, you have 6 or 9 months of approvals anyway to get through our process, we can coordinate these larger projects going through plus on the front end. But yeah, if we had to, you bring up a good point, if we had to do it for every little parcel, it would really slow down our process, and I think it would harm our residents if we held them up that much just to transfer a house in this case.
So, yeah, I want some clarity on Councilman King's question of the determination of major and minor.
Right.
Can it be done with a phone call?
Yes.
Without,
that's the way we did this.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
sir.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. What
I
we
don't want to
did.
get into a lengthy. Well, it's not me wanting. It may be mandated that we have to do it, but
Sure.
I don't want the situation where economic development gets ground to a halt because we're waiting on something seemingly minor.
Right, absolutely.
But then somebody else might say, hey, well, we want input on that.
Well, and you bring a good point. What we think or what I think or what the building official thinks might not always align with what the state planner thinks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's exactly what we did here when we knew we needed to change the comprehensive plan, which we just adopted. We reached right out to them. They were very responsive to us, and they basically wrote this memorandum around that. And I would tell you, this is a living document. If we find where there is an acreage that works for us and we say 50 acres is a good bright point, like the 100 dwelling unit residential subdivision, I believe they would work with us and really refine that over time, adding to this document in the future as we get more familiarity working with the new comprehensive plan and its maps and how they want to proceed.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Just one.
Councilman King?
Thank you, sir. Just for my to get clarity. So is there a way to move this forward? Let's say that you bring it to the committee or you bring it to council, but you're still waiting from a recommendation from, I mean, or does everything have to wait? So instead of waiting, let's say it takes 90 days.
Yeah.
Could you work through that saying, hey, you know what, our recommendation is to move this forward, bring it to council, public hearing, and then wait for the ruling, or is it, or is it?
I'll give you a yes and no.
Okay.
Okay, because as an example, I would not recommend, and I don't believe council could give a final approval while state comments are still pending.
Okay.
You would want to have all that information about traffic, about environmental impact, you know, the sundry of things that you get from the various state agencies. You would want to have that in your possession before you make a final decision. Now, projects that do a lot, that are impactful on land, have a lot of land development, again, they go through multiple steps. So we certainly would identify this early on for the developer and say, hey, this is something you got to do, just like you got to go get your state fire marshal approval. You got to go get, you know, the other approvals from the state, DelDOT approval.
Right.
So it would fit into their, we would help them fit it into their timeline.
Well, I guess I'm referring more to like a workshop forum, an open conversation with your constituents, people in the community, while this is kind of working through, not so much coming to council and asking for a vote, just saying, hey, based on, you know, if that kind of makes sense, just to kind of inform people or get some feedback.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. I mean, really, the only group of our stakeholders that this affects is predominantly, you know, the landholders, the development community, the economic development folks. The average person who has a house, it's conforming, we have the right zoning, this will never affect us.
Sure.
It's people who are doing larger projects, trying
Well, I was
to.
thinking more or less like DelDOT. Sometimes DelDOT could take, they could take 6 months or a year or maybe even more to come back with a ruling, you know, so things come to a complete stop. So if we say, hey, we can't do anything until DelDOT makes their ruling. So what I was thinking, or kind of thinking out loud, is, hey, can you move these pieces while DelDOT's still determining what that final project looks like, if that kind of makes sense?
Yes. Yes, sir.
If I could chime in, I mean, we often do that with preliminary site plan reviews, and we also do that with final site plan reviews while we're waiting.
Yeah.
It's pending while we're waiting on final approvals.
Right.
But the Office of State Planning and Coordination is kind of an apex in the hierarchy. You're not going to do anything until you get them to do anything, and then DelDOT, the fire marshal, city planning and zoning, all that comes further down. So, you know, with a simple change, some of those things are not even necessary, such as the issue we had tonight. I mean, there's no changes.
It makes sense. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and maybe to wrap it all up, I mean, we would, or to wrap up maybe the answer to your question, we always endeavor with the development community or homeowners or anybody to try to help them navigate the process as quickly as possible. And if there are things we can help them or steer them towards doing while they wait for their approvals, we absolutely will help them with that.
Good, thank you.
Yes.
Councilman Santos.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just want to make sure I understand this. So if we use the example of tonight where they came in and wanted to rezone it from a C2 to an R1, they're going to have to go through plus, and it's going to take, they're not going to have to go at this point? They don't have to?
Is it possible you could go back to that picture? And
Just keep in mind that it was previously R1,
yes.
and then it was
Keep
changed to
going
C2
Okay.
for their use, and then now it's changed
Right
back.
there. So prior to this, this is the new proposed change, that the red, and the red denotes commercial. The red was that little block that's yellow now that denotes that house. So it meets these criteria that we laid out here. And again, we specifically wrote this because this came up right away. And we have another one like this that we're looking at. So this is common where we just massage zoning, because the boundary needs to change. So it's surrounded on two sides by the zone we're going to. So that checks the box in the MOU that we don't need to get plus review. And it doesn't change the development pattern. So as the Vice Mayor said, it was prior residential. That development was laid out that way residentially, and it really matches the development pattern. So it really checks all these boxes, and then we would basically just concur with Office of State Planning. Here's what we got. Through an email. Here's the tax map and parcel number. We'd send them a copy of the land use map from the comprehensive plan and say, here's the proposed change. They would get us back in days, within a day or two. Yep, we concur, it doesn't need to go through plus, and then we drive on. If they say, well, wait a minute, we would like to look at this, then we'll go ahead and go back through the plus process. But a simple adjustment like this, a massaging, you're going to see this occasionally. It's going to happen. What the difference between before the old comprehensive plan and the new comprehensive plan, the change is we have to now do parcel by parcel zoning. So we had to go in the existing city and identify everybody's zone, and then we had to go out in the growth zone and identify everybody's zone. And I believe everybody that lives out in the thousands of parcels that we identified a use in the future on, they didn't look at it. But when it comes time to potentially annex and develop their property, it's going to get looked at. And they're going to say, well, why is it that way? I didn't want it residential. I wanted it commercial. I wanted it, vice versa. Right. So these are going to come up because we're drilling down with more and more information in our comprehensive plans.
Okay. So I thought that if we adopted this, it made it so that we didn't have to go through that process, and I thought that we would have to go through the process with this one, since we haven't adopted it yet. No. Okay.
This one would be, and we have a letter in the file that they concur that the one we just did does not need plus.
Okay.
This just formalizes our agreement going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's all it does.
Just keep in mind also that during the comprehensive plan development, there was we requested a lot of public input. So people in these zones, the growth zones, had an opportunity for input, and whether they did or didn't, we adopted the plan, but they'll have an opportunity, if they want to do development, to go through this plus process if it's a large enough change and it's isolated from another zone, right? I mean, if it's not contiguous with another zone.
Okay. And we did a little, this is kind of anecdotal information, but we did a little research. We spoke with the town of Georgetown. We spoke with state planning about how to address this and what our policy should be. As an example, we were told that the city of Dover only deals with these minor changes once or twice a year. So they stack them up and then they deal with them. Now that's a much larger city, but when we talked about it, the economic development director, the building official, and myself, we think for us that's really untenable. If people want to invest in our city, want to make a change, we want to accommodate them sooner rather than later. So we're willing to do these at any time through our process as quickly as we can and meet all the requirements.
Okay. Have we exhausted all the questions?
No, I appreciate it. I got a really better understanding.
If there's no more questions, then receive a motion.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I will make a motion to approve the revisions to the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Seaford, Delaware, and the Delaware Office of State Planning Coordination addressing coordinated review of certain development proposals and permit the Vice Mayor to execute the revised document on behalf of the city as presented.
Thank you, Councilman Santos. We have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilman McCoy. Any questions? Any further questions? If not, we'll call for the yeas and nays. Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson? Aye. Okay. on to new business number 6. We're going to present for approval the resolution 2021-02 approving the issuance of up to $463,500 maximum aggregate principal amount of a general obligation note to the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, Delaware Water Pollution Control Revolving Fund, as registered owner to finance the planning and design of upgrade and expansion improvement to the city's wastewater treatment facility.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
It was a lot.
It is a lot. It doesn't get any better.
I should have just chucked it over there.
No. I thank you for the tee up. In council's package, we do have resolution 2021-02. And as the Vice Mayor laid out, this is for the a borrowing of up to $463,500. The terms of the loan would be 5-year loan payback at 0% interest. This is a loan through the State Revolving Fund, and it's a division of DENREC that we work with routinely, regularly. And as council will recall, we have to start moving forward on our wastewater treatment plant expansion. This $463,500 is our estimated engineering cost for the headworks design. Our estimated timeline is this will take 9 to 12 months. So we budgeted this year, and council approved in the budget using the SRF loan to fund the headwork. So this doesn't cost any money to the taxpayers. As part of our charter, section 37A, it's outlined in here, we are allowed to have floating debt up to $3 million in any budget year. This would take away some of that, the $400 and some thousand. In addition to this, with all the other floating debt that council's approved in this year's budget, that's about $500,000. So taking this loan would keep us well below the $3 million, about $1 million plus or minus. But it does reference that, so it is within council's authority to do that. This resolution authorizes us to execute all the paperwork once it's prepared. The mayor and myself will do that as we process this loan. These are good loan terms, and some of the issues behind this, the State Revolving Fund is working with us and helping us get to where we can have a design, a cost estimate, and they really are looking to help us finance the larger project of wastewater treatment plant expansion. This can be and has the option of we can either pay it off in the next 5 years at 0% interest, or if we move ahead to wastewater treatment plant expansion, the construction contract, we can roll the remaining balance of that in year 2 or 3 into that overall loan. That overall loan will have interest, but I'm going to make the recommendation to City Council, and I've spoken with the Director of Finance. We're going to go ahead and budget paying this forward as we move, as we go. Through the 5 years, we're going to go ahead and do that until we get the new loan for plant expansion. But these are good loan terms. This is standard language. Our attorney has reviewed it. The bond attorney has also reviewed it. So staff would recommend signing it. The Director of Public Works really wanted to get started several months ago, so he's anxious to move the project forward.
Okay, are there any questions from the council?
Just one.
Councilman King.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. So Charles, if I understood you correctly, this is at 0%?
Yes,
0% loan. That's a great loan.
Yes, sir.
It's not a good loan.
It's a good
charging
program.
No interest. Yeah,
it's a good
that's
program.
Phenomenal.
Any other questions? If there's no other questions, I'll receive a motion.
All right, Mr. Vice Mayor, Councilman King, I will make the motion to approve Resolution 2021-02, approving the insurance of up to $463,500 maximum aggregate principal amount of a general obligation note to the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environment Control, Delaware Water Pollution Control Revolving Fund, as registered owner to finance the planning and design of an upgrade and expansion improvements to the city wastewater treatment facility as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any questions on the motion? If there are no questions, then I'll call for the yeas and nays. Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson? Aye. Councilman Holland?
Aye.
And Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. New business number 7. I don't see the Director of Finance and Human Resources, so I'm going to call it our HR coordinator, Annette Cole.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council.
Good
evening. Good evening.
In front of you, in your packet, you have a proposed pregnancy policy. The city management team is looking to implement this policy because we recognize that a diverse workforce is a valuable asset, and that pregnancy is a temporary physical condition unique to women, which may or may not affect an employee's ability to perform many of the usual duties of her job classification. This is especially true for the sworn officers of the police department, so you're going to see that the policy is geared more towards our sworn officers. The purpose of this policy is to provide options that allow for a sworn officer to remain working in a full-time capacity while performing full duty assignments in a combination with alternative duty assignments for as long as reasonably possible. This policy seeks to establish a reasonable balance between a woman's right to work, free from discrimination, and to protect the property interests she has in her job, while also guarding against the risks to her and her unborn child that can be inherent in some of the more dangerous job duties that are assigned to sworn officers. The policy does this by establishing procedures to modify full duty assignments and, when needed, provide temporary alternative duty assignments to eligible pregnant sworn officers when they are unable to safely perform all the essential functions of their normal assignments. This policy is not intended to interfere with or diminish any rights or privileges to which an employee may be entitled to under federal, state, or local law, including but not limited to the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, and does not supersede any other Seaford Police Department policy and or the collective bargaining agreement. If an employee is unable to work in any capacity due to medical complications, existing short-term medical leave policies and FMLA will apply and will be administered as it is laid out in the handbook currently. The rest of the information before you states how management intends to implement the policy, including the different job assignments under the full duty option as well as the maternity duty option that they will be provided, how pregnant employees will be evaluated, and what will be required of employees before returning to their full duty assignment. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Are there any questions?
Got one.
Councilman Holland?
Yes, and that, is this based on the doctor note that they would need to?
Yes, they would have to provide documentation from their doctor, and they would have to take all of this, including their job description, to the doctor, and
Right.
then we would base it off of what the doctor recommended, yes.
Councilman King?
And just to piggyback off of what Councilman Holland, so how often do you visit the doctor, right? So as you get further along, say, hey, if I went, I'm just asking, like if I went last month and everything was great and.
I think
You know
that
what I mean?
as
That's-
they get further along, yes, they do have to attend the doctor's office more often, I assume.
Okay.
Never been there myself. But I think that as they get a little further along, it becomes more cumbersome to be out on the road and doing those types of jobs. It also could be something where the look, if you have a police officer coming to you and they're 7 or 8 months pregnant, you know, it makes them maybe show a weakness that somebody might take advantage of. So I think once you hit that level, I think in the policy it states between 4 and 5 months would be where we would say, you know, give them the option to do the maternity duty option if they chose. That's not something that they would be required to do. Right. But it would be off of what their doctor recommends. Obviously, if there's any type of medical complications, there would be other possible.
And what does the maternity leave look like? How many weeks does
The maternity leave, we do not have a maternity leave policy. We have everything under our short-term medical leave policy. So what happens is, and with a normal 9-month pregnancy, our short-term medical leave policy is 6 months. So say somebody in their 3rd month said, okay, I can't work full duty, I can't do these types of jobs, so I'm going to go on the light duty option. If they were to do that under the short-term medical leave policy, they would exhaust it before they would even go
Before they
have
went
the
into labor,
baby.
right. Okay.
So what this does is gives a maternity option that doesn't go into
Okay.
light duty until such time as they either go out on leave, or if the doctor said, okay, you can't work,
Puts them out.
right.
Okay,
So that's just kind of the basis for
okay,
this.
thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions? So Councilman Santos? Did you?
I did have another question. I know this policy is geared towards police officers, it seems, and you alluded to
Yes.
that. What other people, employees, do you think this could also impact?
So we've had incidents of pregnancy, obviously, at City Hall, because there's quite a few females that have worked and do work at City Hall. And traditionally, those employees, because of the nature of their job, they've been able to fall underneath our short-term medical leave, as Ms. Cole
Well,
laid out.
they've been able to work without any type of
Consideration.
alternative duty assignments.
Restriction. Yep.
We do have other departments where we do have females that we thought it may come up at some point, maybe in our parks or rec department.
You could
or
have them in Public Works.
Public Works,
Electric.
correct.
Any
So
position?
I think,
Any.
if that were to come, this may have to be revisited, or an alternative duty assignment may be required for that person as well, if it comes up, yes.
Okay, and this seems to be for like more major things. I know that sometimes women get pregnant and they have to regurgitate a lot because things make them sick. Like this that has nothing to do with that, right?
Yeah.
If they're here, there's no special.
Morning sickness is just
Yes.
it's just an issue that occurs.
This would kind of be more for firearm qualifications. There may be intensive traffic. If they're working traffic and they're on their feet for long hours, that could be detrimental. If they're going on a drug bust, you don't want to be coming into contact with certain things. So this kind of allows their supervisors, their management, to say, okay, we will give you this alternative assignment where we won't put you in that predicament, if at all possible.
Okay, that's all.
I have a question, or it might be for either of you. So my understanding is that this is triggered by the physician.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean,
so-
even before that, we can actually have the employee come to the supervisor or HR.
Correct.
And then we can start talking with them about their options, how we can work with them. But absolutely, the physician has to become involved.
So, speculating on a hypothesis here, you have a highly motivated mother-to-be, and management has to intervene because she can no longer fit into personal protective equipment.
That can happen.
An electrical line worker, public works, sworn officer,
You're correct.
any administrative position.
Right.
So at what point does management intervene?
Okay, so interestingly enough, we've had some conversations in this policy development. Our chief has had experience with that. And, that's where your supervisor and your HR department has to intervene. And you're correct. There are some, not all people are the same, not all pregnancies are the same. Some people can go very far into their pregnancy and do amazing things, And at some point, though, that's where the chief of police, the sergeant, say, wait a minute, we don't feel your bulletproof vest fits you, your gun does not fit you correctly. We have to work with you to kind of bring you back and
Okay.
think about your safety.
So I'll be right with you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Are there any statutes or anything that would say that the city must make an accommodation for
Yes.
personal protective gear?
Well, this addresses that we will not.
Okay.
Now,
All right.
when you
I
talk
missed
about, when you talk about an accommodation, that falls under ADA.
Correct.
So they could come to us, there could be a scenario where an employee, any employee could come to us and say, I need this specific accommodation to do my job effectively. And we'll work with them, depending upon what it
that
is.
Just to
doesn't-
clarify, pregnancy itself
Is
is
not a
not.
disability.
Is not a disability.
No.
But a lot of the complications that can come from pregnancy are. So it's a gray area that would,
Pardon me, I wasn't inferring that it was a disability, I was just talking about modification of personal protective equipment.
and
A vest, a gun
this,
belt,
right,
a lineman's harness,
Right.
whatever.
yes.
Yeah, we'd work with them to an extent, but at some point, that fire retardant garment, that harness has to be,
Okay.
Well, and I
Appropriate.
think it does state in here that any type of personal protective equipment, we would provide to the extent
sorry.
that we could.
Yeah, okay.
If we were to change them over into a plainclothes assignment, then we would
Right.
not give them a stipend for that.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions?
You can go
Oh,
first.
Councilman McCoy.
You got me thinking now, like, we've been talking about how this policy would stem to other departments.
it could.
Could. So in my mind, I guess the question that I'm pondering is, why not include language to include the other departments as well, if we think that, the eventuality, we might get to that point as well?
Well, a couple things, and that's, Ms. Cole's going to help me here. When we set out down this road, we looked for model policies. And what we found overwhelmingly was a policy just like this. When we spoke with our attorney, Dave Williams, who handles all of our negotiating, he's our labor attorney for us, he reviewed this. He felt we were good to proceed with this, because as you know, with dealing with the police union, we can catch grievances, so on and so forth. So we felt at this point a narrower scope was better, address where we are, what we needed to do. We had the model policy. I would be a little concerned if we made this too voluminous and went through all the what-if scenarios.
Sure.
We might make the policy confusing, hard to manage, and that's not what we want for our employees. We want to keep our employees working. We want to support them during these periods, and that's why we kept it to where we were. Please add.
And I think that in those circumstances, this could very well flow. I mean, I know that it says sworn officers a lot, but obviously, even if we had a parks employee that couldn't ride the mower, we would be willing to try to find alternative work assignments for her that she could do. And I think that that's, it's very convertible to that, or any other department for that matter. The basis of it is that if you are unable to do your full duty assignment because of the dangerous nature of it, or maybe the smells, the fumes, those types of things, then we would be able to, and that is what your doctor is recommending, then we would be able to change and work with alternative work assignments.
This document would function as a working document we can adjust at any point in time.
Absolutely.
Correct, yes.
Yep, it's a living document.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
No other questions, I'll receive a motion.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I will make a motion to approve the recommendation of June Merritt, Director of Finance and Human Resources, and adopt the pregnancy policy as presented.
Thank you, Councilman Santos. We have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilman McCoy. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, I'll take the yeas and nays. Councilman Santos.
Aye.
Councilman McCoy.
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
Councilman Holland.
Aye.
And Councilman Henderson. Aye. All right. Moving on, we have no old business posted,
No, sir.
and we'll move on to reminders of meetings.
So we have a few this meeting. The City of Seaford offices will be closed November 26th and November 25th and November 26th in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. Hope Council enjoys their holiday with their family. Seaford Christmas Parade is December 4th. Line up along Pennsylvania Avenue at 6 p.m., step off at 7. Rain date is December 5th at the same times. The 2021 Holiday Decorating Contest within the city of Seaford, judging is to start the week of December 6th. I think the mayor has reached out to all of council to start to schedule that. Employee Christmas Party is December 11th at the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department Banquet Hall, and that starts at 6. Please get your RSVP in to Tracy if you have not. Bill Bennett will be the acting city manager from November 27th, 2021 until December 5th, 2021. And last one, the leaf machine is currently in operation until December 31st. In rain events, please help us to help you by clearing catch basins or calling Public Works to have the catch basin cleared at 629-8307 or after hours 629-4550. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We'll move on to committee reports, and we'll start with administration and IT with Councilman Santos.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My report has been submitted in its entirety. The city had several meetings this past couple of weeks. They attended a meeting with Senator Carter and Carload Express representatives regarding a proposed Seaford development plans. They held a virtual meeting with the Director of Facilities from Oklahoma State University regarding AMI meter deployments. They attended the utility building expansion progress meeting with a contractor and an architect. They attended the Unified Seaford meeting at City Hall. They participated in a call with KRM and settlement attorneys to ensure that closing documents are prepared. They participated in a conference call with the SRF attorney regarding the borrowing of funds for the wastewater treatment plant design. And they met with the Kiwanis Club president regarding the Senate House placement in the downtown for 2021. So it'll be across the street from us. They also handled interviews for Public Works Tech 1. That position is still open. They attended the Police Department Communication Specialist interviews. We attended the Veteran Day Remembrance at Kiwanis Parks. They attended the delivery of the electric motorcycles event at the Police Department. For the IT report, they are working with the Candoris engineers to set up the VDI environment to facilitate upgrades. They are starting to test the instant clone virtual desktops with the app volume. The projects that the IT department is working on are the command vehicles, the high street camera, the police department VMware migration, asset management, and disaster recovery project. For the administration report, finance, they're still working with the fiscal year 2021 audit. All other businesses routine.
Okay, thank you, and I'll go ahead and present the Police and Fire Liaison Report. Fire Chief John Wilson's report states that there are 835 calls to date from the fire section for an average of 2.4 calls per day for the month of November and an average of 2.5 calls per day total for the year so far. Under EMS calls, there are 3,431 calls to date for an average of 10.5 calls per day for the year and 9.6 calls per day for the month of November. And that leaves us with a total of 4,266 calls per day for an average of 13 calls per day out of the department. There were a couple of significant calls over the period where we assisted Station 71 Blades for a working house fire on Concord Road and a kitchen fire on Haven Drive. Ambulance A87 is out of service with an engine turbo issue. Under EMS, firefighter EMT Mika Eddy started full-time last week and going through the FTO process. And firefighter EMT Shane Gilbert also started on November 1st, and he's working through the FTO process. The yearly license paperwork for 2022 has been submitted to the Fire Commission office. And under training, the last training class was November 17th, which was the topic was basement fires, which was presented by the Delaware State Fire School. 18 members were present. The next training class, which is coming up this Saturday from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, is an instructional live fire training at the Atlanta Road property at the intersection of Atlanta Road and Crossgate Drive. It's being publicized on social media, and did it make the paper?
I'm not positive of that. I believe they were handing out flyers.
Okay, and flyers did go out. So if you're available on Saturday, this is a very rare training event. It'll be partnered by Station 71 of Blades, and there are instructors from across the country who will be attending, instructing on this live fire demonstration. There will be just want to clarify that the house is not being burned down. The intentional fires will be set with contents, and it'll be extinguished, and that the process will be repeated as a training exercise. So after the instructional part of it is done, the place will be boarded up, and then it will be properly demolished at some point after that.
Yes, January,
Do you
February.
have a permit?
They do. We
Okay,
did
so
issue, yes, sir.
So they do have a demolition permit, so that'll ensue shortly after the live fire training. So if you have a chance to go out and see it on November 27th, between the hours of 8 and 4, I highly recommend it because it's a rare event. The fire prevention posters and essays were all in and judged, and they have been judged, and I did not have time to post the winners, but I do have an email from the chief, and I will state for the record, and I'll insert this into my report later as corrected. In kindergarten, Miss Grace Swingle from Sussex Montessori won first prize. Second prize was Miles Villalobos of West Seaford Elementary. Third place was Janaya Jean, West Seaford Elementary. In first grade, first place was John Short from West Seaford Elementary. Second place was Gabe Forston, West Seaford Elementary. And third place was Yvonne Ramos Garcia, West Seaford Elementary. Second grade, I'm going to butcher these names, and I apologize in advance. First grade, or first prize was Liza Amabile, Sussex Montessori. Second place was Melanie Gonzalez Ortiz, West Seaford Elementary. Third place was Talay Parker, West Seaford Elementary. Third grade, first place was Gia Forston, Seaford Central Elementary. Second was Hayden Haas of Sussex Montessori. Third place was Treyana Bowden Dorsey of Sussex Montessori. Fourth grade, first place was Aiden Garces Schamberg of Sussex Montessori. Second place was Zoe Thomas of Sussex Montessori. Third place was Olivia Monroe of Sussex Montessori. fifth grade. First place was Kyra Watts of Frederick Douglass Elementary. Second place was Miana Collins of Fred Douglass Elementary. Third place was Copper Walsh of Frederick Douglass Elementary. We had no sixth grade participants, and in seventh grade, first place was Naira Michelle, Seaford Middle School, and second place was Cameron Walls of Seaford Middle School. No eighth grade and no special education entrance. So congratulations to all of those folks. The first place winners will be going to, those names have been submitted to the county, and they'll move on if they get placed in prizes, and then they'll move on to the state if they're so fortunate. So thanks to all those who participated, and thanks to the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department for their efforts in this. In the interest of saving time with that, I'll just call your attention to the other news and events. The Volunteer Fire Department is always busy with community events and education and involvement. I will call out the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department Auxiliary had their drive-through fundraiser at Station 87 on Saturday, and the food was delicious. If you missed it, you missed out on a good event, because that was some good food. Under Seaford Police Department, there's a chart showing all the totals and subtotals for all the incidences year to date and previous 3 years. The chief did, during our meeting, he exercised a little bit of concern that we may approach the 2019 levels in total crimes. Right now, we're at 5,410 year-to-date as of Sunday, November 21st. 2019 was a spike in the year with 6,619 total calls for service. So we've got a little more than a month and a half to go, so it may be that we reach that total. He is concerned about that. So under all complaints, criminal, there were 176 arrests, and you'll see the distribution there. We have an 84% clearance rate, and in additional, I want to call your attention under additional crime data below. You'll see the crime chart. The department's achieved a 56% clearance rate, which is better than the last period, but I want to call your attention to that it's twice the national average. So the police department needs to be commended, especially CID, for closing out some of these cases, and their clearance rate is really exceptional. Under drug complaints, we had 19 drug crimes listed. Under traffic, I want to call your attention to the traffic too. There were 250 total traffic contacts during the period, with 106 citations and 23 warnings. If you refer back to the previous period, it's higher by a lot over the previous period due to some overtime and some enforcement initiatives, and that has yielded traffic citations, but it's also yielded in getting more drugs, some more drug crime arrests. So you'll see both of those columns or categories have increased. Under crashes, there were 28 total crashes with 3 injury accidents. And under significant events, you'll be able to go through and see some of the things that have yielded fruit for no better expression from their enforcement activities. You'll see some of those significant events. As well as the administration remains very busy. I will call your attention to the chief has been named to the Rural Overdose Systems of Care Committee, which I think he has I missed the name of it. I think he has a leadership position on that committee. That's
I believe he does.
A new committee that started up to try to combat overdose in our rural towns. And I want to thank the chief also for chairing the police chief's advisory board meeting in my stead. I missed the meeting due to an automobile accident that I was involved in that evening, and I wasn't able to be present. So I want to thank the chief for stepping in there. And under training, this is significant. PFC Nanola and the chief and Sergeant Justice attended fair and impartial policing train the trainer course. So this 16-hour course will enable them to train others in it'll give them training so that they can train others in fair and impartial policing training. And that concludes my report. We'll move on to Councilman Holland's report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We'll start off with Parks and Recs. They are busy organizing the shop to prepare for winter projects. They replaced lights at Gateway Park Christmas tree with new LED lighting, and they'd like to give kudos to Electric Department, Public Works, and Code for assisting. And they advertised for a youth co-ed wrestling program to begin December the 6th, and have registered around 100 kids for the youth co-ed basketball. And they have assisted with basketball clinic hosted at the middle school on 11/20. And they are preparing for Carolyn in the Park, the 29th at 7, if anyone would like to attend. And all the work is routine, and I will switch over to code. Site work being finalized at East Park Business Center, and all permits has been issued for 7-Eleven convenience store, and footers have been installed. And all the work is routine. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilman Holland. Councilman McCoy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Since the last report, the crew, as Councilman Holland alluded to, the crew finished putting up the Christmas lights. Also put up the Christmas lights and blades as well. They finished the installation of the EV charging station on High Street and fixed a piece of damaged conduit in Muirfield 1, pulled in a new wire and made up the elbows. In regards to our director, had a standard director's meeting, staff meeting, and council liaison meeting. Talked to the electrician at the Amazon project about setting the transformer, and had a meeting about the computer disaster recovery plan. He also met on site at residence at River Place with their electrical contractor. Over the course of a few upcoming weeks, the goals will be to work at the Amazon site, continue working in Bel Air multifamily, and continue changing the lights on Sussex Highway to LED. Vice Mayor, that has been my report. It's been submitted in its entirety.
Thank you, Councilman McCoy. Can I ask a question? Maybe it's for the city manager, maybe it's for you. Do you know the expected operating time for the charging stations, when it's going to be cut loose?
We don't. They have it installed. Right now, the kind of the final thing they're waiting on is getting the billing correct. So we have a back of house function that we have to process so we can charge people for the electricity. So, but it should be soon, and we're going to get some signage made so we don't have people parking there that are not driving EVs, because it is a public parking spot.
Yeah,
so, but it should be soon, hopefully before Christmas. I'll try to get you a report on that.
One other question, is it a Tesla station, or do they have their own adapter? It's just the other standard?
Yeah, we have the other standard. It is not a Tesla station.
Okay, so will there be any kind of is it going to be word of mouth, social media? How will that be blasted out, and how will it be found by a passerby?
All of the above. So first, I think we want to have a slow rollout to make sure our billing is working, the charging station is working. But then once we have it, and we're confident with it, we're going to certainly do a social media push. We'd like to maybe get Councilman McCoy to do a video, potentially with the mayor. And we've even talked with the Director of Economic Development about potentially doing some things for downtown businesses to promote that tourism with people that might come off of Route 13, stop, maybe eat, get a cup of coffee, shop, go to the museums. So we're looking at some of those pushes as well.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how long it's going to take before it gets pinned on Google Maps or Waze.
I think it actually, yeah, exactly.
Is it already, or?
No, it will.
I think
so that's
what
another
I-
option. It'll actually, when you're driving, it'll actually allude saying, hey, there's a charging station
I think when
at
we
this
register
location.
with this program that'll charge,
Yeah, to go.
I think that's when it'll be picked
Yeah,
up.
trigger, yeah.
But this is our first experience with this, so I'll tell you more once we find out.
Okay. Well, thank you, Councilman McCoy, and thank you, City
Yes, sir.
Manager.
Yes, sir.
We'll move on to Councilman King.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And before I do this, just, yeah, I think you did a great job tonight filling in. And I know I value your leadership and wisdom, so good job tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to start with the Public Works Department over the last 2 weeks, and we'll hit some of the highlights. My report has been submitted in its entirety. As the city manager alluded to, the leaf machine is out doing pickups. The team actually did some patchwork on Shipley and Market, and they're going to go back and crack seal the areas. Paving bid contractors have started. They worked on a collapsed sewer lateral on Market Street. They repaired runover valve boxes in Bel Air. They boarded up property for code and doing all these activities. And unfortunately, there's still one person now, but they're still getting it done. So hats off to the team there. I'm going to jump over to the wastewater treatment facility and compost. All is operating well. Plant performance remains good. We have been selling the last of their compost, so if you want it, you better come and get it because it's soon to be gone. Replacing backwash pump mounts for sand filter as they're fabricated, and no equipment maintenance needed. So some of the upcoming activities over the next 2 weeks in Public Works, they're going to install the remaining number 2 taps at the Bel Air townhouses. They're going to repair cleanouts on the smoke testing list and continue all routine tasks. And then jump over to the wastewater treatment facility. They're going to keep the plant up and running without any violations and perform plant maintenance as needed. And with that, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And with that, Mr. Vice Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilman King. One question regarding the composting. When is that being transferred to the county, the sludge?
The staff is already doing that. We started, I think, 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. But we are finishing out the final piles of the batches
The
of
last batch.
compost that we have, yeah.
Get it while it lasts.
But as Councilman King said, it is getting scarce. So if you'd like some, please contact our operators.
Okay, we have no other business before the council. I'll accept the motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilman Santos, a second.
I'll second.
Councilman McCoy seconds. I'm going to assume that there's no discussion on this motion, so I'll take the yeas and nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, happy Thanksgiving.